Happy to welcome Evan Zeisel to the show. Evan, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We were just talking before we started. This has been had to reschedule a couple of times, not because of you, but because of me. So I appreciate your patience and really excited to chat with you here on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm really excited to be here. I got a chance to watch some of your new reboot podcast episodes, and they are amazing.
I appreciate it, and now you get to add yourself to it, which is really cool. So, talk to me. I always like to start these conversations with kind of the inception or the beginning of whether it's an actor, screenwriter, director, because there's not like a how to guidebook on how to get into the film industry. And that's one of the reasons why I find it so appealing is that everyone has their own unique pathway. So, what is your story? How did you get into the film industry?
Boy, in many different ways. Back when I was in first grade, I, uh, yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of performers, I got into plays when I was in elementary school and stuff, and then sort of post university went to theater school and got into the industry that way. So I'm an actor and filmmaker, and then through that, uh, in the about 2010, I produced and released a feature film, and ran into like all of the online piracy that just destroys sort of the online income streams that we as independent filmmakers depend on to make back the costs for investors, or if it's your own money, and then like tried to fight it myself and ran into walls and just was like, oh god, it's like overwhelming. Why isn't there like an affordable, easier way of doing this? So I came into sort of the copyright protection sphere of things from a filmmaker's perspective. I got into filmmaking from the, as previous guests of yours said, go and make movies. I started making movies, shorts, web series, sketches, features, and then trying to figure out, okay, like what kind of a model actually allows you to keep doing that. And when you put in the money, either your own or from somebody who's helping finance it, like there's an expectation of hopefully at least making that back. So then you have the money to do it again. And I think especially in the indie world, filmmaking is such a passion area, but there's only so much money you have or so much money you can ask for. And so you kind of rely on, okay, I got to figure out a way to make some of the money back so I can do the next one. And I sort of, ran into that wall of, did this horror thriller feature, and like, it's a genre that people watch, but immediately saw it go on every single piracy site as soon as it was up on like Apple TV or any of that. That sort of disadvantage of the digital realm we're in now, like 35 millimeter. I think, Alex Hyde White was saying, they've got reels or VHS tapes, like those are the crappy versions, but now it's so easy to just do a screen record. It really hurts. And so the like Batman Dark Knight in me just wanted revenge and figure out a way to sort of screw over these people who like don't realize how much they're hurting. And there's like, I don't know. I remember hearing arguments about like, oh, more people get to see your film. And it's like, yeah, but they go watch it on YouTube. They go watch it on Amazon Prime. Like you don't have to pay for it anymore. You got Tubi TV. Like that's not an excuse anymore. So yeah, that's sort of the roundabout way that I got into it.
Well, the thing you mentioned too is that like once it's out there for free, like it just spreads like wildfire. So
Yeah.
I think it's awesome that not only have you started this company to help other filmmakers with piracy issues, but you have that level of relatability because you are a filmmaker. You know how hard it is to make a film, and since you've been through the horror experience of having to deal with the ugly side of piracy, it gives you that level of relatability. So like you've been through it, so you know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest things that my partner and I have focused on is like, how do we come up with new stuff to help filmmakers? And like we run into the thing, we like, compared to other companies, we try and offer as like low a cost as possible, because I always think of like it as me, if I was getting a product, like what could I afford? And it's not much for indie filmmakers. And the piracy world is kind of a whack-a-mole scenario, because in reality, they don't actually care about your film. They don't care about getting the word out. They just want traffic to their site. And that's how they make their money. And so it's just like, oh yeah, we'll take it down if you do this jumping through hoops absurdity that the U.S. law requires. And it's just annoying. But yeah, I think that's what fuels me is just like the frustration as an indie filmmaker of like, you have all these great films, but and they're these low budget, and that's where like the passion, at least for myself, I think, is in the filmmaking community. It's not in these giant budget movies where these people have already made their thing. It's the one who's like, I got this idea. I can shoot it on a shoestring budget, or a little more than a shoestring budget, but like it will be worth it because I believe this is a great movie. I think what was his name? He played one of the twin doctors on the Mindy Project.
Oh
There's a time
shoot.
travel movie. What's his name? They're the brothers who are writers and actors. My brain is just
I'm
uh,
sure it'll come to us in a second, but I know who you're
it'll
talking
come
about.
to us. But he had, I think he had a great little kind of speech at South by Southwest, and he was like, the first film they did, they put a bunch of money behind it, but it wasn't a good story. But then they realized, okay, let's make a great film with a great story, and you take that, and you don't need a big budget, and people will see the greatness of that film without that budget. And I think like that's where like the creative juices of our industry come from. I mean, yes, sure, they'll license every comic book character from here to Kingdom Come. As you talk in your show, the what is it, fourth, fifth, sixth iteration of Fantastic Four is about to come out or about to film. Um, but I think the films that we love to see, or catch our attention, are the ones that are unique. And I think that comes out of the indie world. But I think the indie world also then, like, I've seen it just get hit so hard with these piracy sites, because the Avengers don't care if they're on some piracy sites. Like, they're already selling their merchandise that's probably making them way more than all these films, the indie films make. But you get on there, you get on your Amazon Prime, you get on your Tubi TV, and it's like, just watch there. But then people just like, oh, I got this site that looks kind of like Netflix. It's got a crazy name that clearly is not legal, but I'm going to watch it anyway.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. And I think once I became a filmmaker, I that's where I really gained the appreciation of, because you can remember back in the day of websites like Napster and LimeWire that you could download music for free. And
I don't know what you're talking about.
but when you're on the other side of it, you get it and you understand why
Yeah.
it's important, because as you mentioned with Marvel, they make so much merchandise and any other means that they have to make money. The piracy thing doesn't really affect them that much because they're going to make a ton of money regardless. But if you're an indie filmmaker, every cent is valuable, because as you mentioned, if you get investors that are expecting at least a certain amount
Mm-hmm.
back, if you lose anything, it can be detrimental.
Yep. Yep. And I mean, you think of Spaceballs, and it's like, it's all in the merchandise. And I remember, Game of Thrones, when that was on with HBO, they were like, yeah, share your passwords, because the more people who watch this are going to buy Game of Thrones merch, and we're going to make so much money. And they did. Every time there's a site that has, oh, there's 3,000 views of this indie film, and it's not, an Amazon Prime where you get like cents on the hour or something. It's barely anything, but like, it takes away from that filmmaker being able to make that next film. And it's like, as you said, you don't think about it when it was Napster, it was LimeWire, you're playing on your what was that? Like the MP3 player, a Winamp. Oh, back in the
Oh, I
day.
forgot about Winamp.
Winamp with its visualization.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, and when I started filmmaking, I started buying all of my songs. I mean, other than, using the streaming platforms where they at least get paid for on the streaming platform. Um, that yeah, it's that sort of detachment. I remember when my first film came out, a friend slash maybe former friend, he was like, "Oh yeah, I'll watch it when I can get it online for free from a pirate site." And I was like, I don't know if we're allowed to swear on this show, but I said, I, I was not super happy with that. I was like, come on, like, there's a respect that comes with that. A respect with just like, hey, you can watch it on something for free, and we will make back something for the film. One of my first films, we did deferred pay, and like that, the money that you as a filmmaker make, being able to then send it to your crew and cast and be like, here, I know this is worth 3 coffees at Starbucks, but like it's something, and it'll start adding up as long as I can keep getting it back. And just, getting cut off at the knees, just, I don't know, angers the heck out of me.
Man, to blatantly just say that takes some
Yeah,
nerve.
yeah.
Wow.
And he's a software programmer, and so in reverse, when I was like, oh, so like the code that you write, like you'd be cool with anybody coming and just using it. He's like, oh no, like I wrote it. That's my property. And I was just like, oh, like, okay, so would you go into back in the day, like a record store, like what was it, Strawberry Records way back in the day, I think had DVDs and stuff. But like, would you go into a store that sells, I guess Best Buy, like a store that has DVDs or Blu-rays, and just like take them and walk out? Because that's kind of what you're doing with piracy. But no, of course not, because that's a physical property. But like if it's digital, if it's this IP, people have got this different thing in their head. It's, some kind of thing where they say it's not the same. It's not the same cost.
Yeah.
And I think of it like a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm not going to spend $1.99 for that app on my phone. And then they'll go buy like a $3 candy bar. And I'll be like, okay, but the app would have lasted you however long, and you just ate that candy bar. But it's that weird thing that once film went digital and on streaming, people stopped caring about the filmmaker, I feel like, at least in the sense of like respect.
Yeah, and I don't want to go off on a completely different tangent because I think it could be its own separate podcast. But yeah, I think that's where the digital realm has been harmful. Because as you mentioned, like you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to go steal a Blu-ray or a DVD. And that's why I think retaining physical media is important. Yeah, having the convenience of digital is great because you can just buy something on Amazon Prime and watch it, or you can go on Netflix or Max, whatever it is, and watch it. But eventually, the things get taken off for a period of time, or sometimes permanently. You buy a Blu-ray,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you've always got it. But that's a great analogy, and a lot of people I think don't. Unfortunately, they don't think of it in that way because as you mentioned, like chances are the movie's only going to be like $1.99 or maybe $3.99 on Amazon Prime. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
really not that expensive. But then you'll go buy a $5 large coffee at Starbucks. So
Yeah.
the process doesn't, like that thought process doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. But I think it's sort of part of the way we've evolved with the internet is we've got this separation. Everything should be free. Uh, and I want it. And it's interesting too, because you also have sometimes with physical media, like I know I bought Battlestar Galactica, not the OG, but the I guess the first reboot, since maybe they're doing a second one. I think that's up in the air. And I bought that on Blu-ray, and it was color corrected originally to be, like better on Blu-ray than normally they would broadcast on TV. And like you don't get that in streaming. You get different things. No, I mean, don't get me started on like DVD extras, which I think is a huge loss in general. But that's a completely different story. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think there is that separation, and that causes it to be even harder in the piracy world because they have these sites and they look really good, and they're, with modern design of websites, you can make a site look like it's Netflix, or make it look like it's Hulu, where you've got your nice videos and this, and the only telltale is the fact that like the name is not a name of a site that would make any sense other than a piracy site. uh, and and people just go to it and they go, oh, like this is what I searched in my internet search, so it must be legit, and if not, the hurdle's so low that they just start watching it.
It's crazy how that can be avoided with just a little bit of research and a little bit of thought. Because as you mentioned, with the evolution of technology, it becomes even harder to discern what is legit and what is not. Because, like you said, people can make a
Mm-hmm.
website that looks just like, Netflix or Hulu, whatever the case may be, and you think, oh, well, there's so many streaming platforms out there. This is just one I haven't heard of. But there's usually
Yeah.
a little tell or a little sign that can make you go, oh, my BS meter is going off. So it's
Yeah,
just
when they have that, they've got a section that's just for sex videos,
that's usually a pretty
or
good
just
giveaway.
one country, or when you click certain links and they like don't actually go anywhere.
Yeah.
Those would be my tips.
Or you click one link and 10 ads pop up. You're like, okay, well
Yeah,
this
yeah,
this is this is not real. So some of it's just,
and
being a little careful.
yeah, and it's really interesting because I think a lot of people don't realize potential dangers of piracy sites because they actually make money in a bunch of different ways, and a lot of them it's traffic, so they've got their Google ads, but other ones, um, they open a side window that's sort of invisible, and they fake scroll through things and click on links to make it seem like you've clicked through to an ad because they make more money that way. And then if you want to keep going down the deeper list, like make sure you have antivirus software, because some piracy sites make their money by adding like Trojan viruses to computers, and then they sell that batch of Trojan virus computers to the highest bidder, and then great, now your computer has essentially been hacked because you clicked on a movie, a pop-up ad came up, you closed it, you thought, but really you just agreed to download something that you didn't see. And so there's also that double-edged sword of like you're screwing yourself over going to piracy sites sometimes.
That's why you buy it legitimately. You save yourself so
Yeah.
much headache. Whether it's your computer or, whether it's, these phones that we carry around, because you can download apps, you can watch movies from pirated sites, and the exact same thing happens. And sometimes much worse things can happen. Like, you get your information hacked, and, next thing you know, you don't have any money, or your identity stolen. There's
Yeah.
there's a lot there's a lot that can happen. A lot that can happen.
Unfortunately, I would say the the general public's fear of that versus getting a free movie seems to be outweighed by, oh, I found a movie that I can watch and I don't have to pay anything, which is sort of one of the reasons I started this site with my friend, is like if we can sort of play whack-a-mole and direct people to the sites where it's AVOD, it's just an ad you watch, you're not paying anything, you can watch it for free, but it gets a little bit of money to the filmmaker, like you are doing good. um and I think that's sort of the goal, is like the more we can block, or not block but take down, help people take down the illegitimate sites, the more that it'll go to the legitimate, it'll help the filmmaker, and like there's that respect level. It's kind of um an interesting thing that I feel like when you're in, as you said, when you're in the film community, you understand the respect from like every member of a crew and talent in front and behind the camera, because it is, at least in my mind, like the one place where it takes a village is fully legit. Like I remember making a film, and my dad saying like, is it going to be good? And I was like, we're in post. Like if the sound design is messed up, like it could be crappy. If the color correct gets messed up, it could be crappy. Like if the edit isn't good, it could, like there's, each person brings something amazing, and that sort of builds that respect on set when you've been, or part of a film, not even on set, but post or pre, of like God, we everybody is so important. Um, even even a PA, like if things don't get done, it clogs things up. Like, but I think unfortunately that doesn't necessarily exist outside of that film world at the same level.
It's funny you mentioned that because when we were shooting my wife's short last month, we actually went to our hometown, which is like a small farming community that's about an hour north of Pensacola, and we filmed at a local restaurant, and we had some of the customers stay after hours to be extras and whatnot. And my mom was one of them, and I asked her what she thought of the whole thing, and she was like, you really don't understand how much work goes into this until you see it. So it's
Oh
like
yeah.
I've been, like it's one thing to say it because I've explained it to people for as long as I've been involved with it, but then once you see it, you really understand that yeah, it takes, even with a short, it takes a lot of people to make it happen.
And I mean, it's it's that sort of like basic. I don't know if this is a good analogy or not. I'm just making it up, but like lighting. Like you need to light a set so that it looks like the set is not lit. Like you need to add lights so that it looks natural, because if you don't have those lights, it doesn't look natural. So you have to do a lot of work to make it not look fake, which it would be if you didn't do all the work. Like it's such a lift, but you never see those. You never see that. Only in the behind the scenes stuff where it's zoomed out and you're like, oh wow, this is there's a lot of people, and there's that person standing outside in the freezing rain because they have to make sure that that light's going through a diffuser that's going through the window to make it look like it's daylight outside.
Yeah, a movie should be like when you talk about lighting with sound, it shouldn't feel like you're watching something fake, if that makes sense. Like as a filmmaker, I'm sure you watch movies and you're like, I wonder how they lit that scene, or I wonder how they did this because of how good it
Mm-hmm.
looks. When you can make a film where you're not thinking of any of that stuff, that's when you've really made it, in my opinion. Same
Yeah,
thing with an
and
edit,
it's
like it
well, and I would
shouldn't
say,
feel edited.
yep, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's sort of the Joseph Campbell kind of the universal stories and things like that. That like if you flow properly, you're telling it like we feel. Some people say save the cat or the different 3-act structure. Like it matches the way we see the world. Or you've got Dan Harmon's kind of circle that he breaks down. That it's all based on how we perceive the world. And I think that's yeah. When you get that right, it just flows.
Mhm.
But it takes a lot of work.
It does, but it's so rewarding when you make it happen, especially like,
Mm-hmm.
when you get the cast and crew to buy into your vision, and they are just as passionate about it as you are. Yeah, it's long
Mm-hmm.
hours, but if you've got a solid crew, you've got a solid cast, you've got a great story, there's no better feeling than when you accomplish it.
That's the thing that fuels my rage for against like people who then steal it and hurt the people who put it together, because you not only have that whole village, but like it's that whole village that usually works way too many hours and puts in, it's like, oh, I'm doing this, but when you're at home, you're thinking about this, you're doing some prep, you're preparing this, you're making a phone call. That like the amount of like blood, sweat, and tears that just goes into like especially indie filmmaking, I don't know, deserves so much respect. Not in the sense of like you must respect this, but just in the sense of like if you like you as you said with your mom, like when you see it, it is such a big undertaking, and it is a thing of beauty to see people working all together to get to a single goal, which is to have it look and run on camera when you get those takes in a beautiful way that then matches with, and then you pull back with the rest of it, and it's like, how dare you defile that.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. So let's talk about your company, Copyright
Yeah,
Slap, which I love the name, by the way. It makes me
thank you.
want to find,
We're a little bit tongue-in-cheek.
yeah, makes me want to find those that violate it and just right in the, right in the
Yes,
face.
yes.
So
Our logo is a robot body slamming a pirate.
I saw that. Yeah, that's great. How did y'all come up with that name, by the way?
Um, well, so there's a thing called the DMCA, the Digital Millennial Copyright Act from 1998, and that's the main U.S. law that like helps remove piracy from the internet, sort of runs it. And when you send a takedown request, it's a takedown. So we started with like, ooh, could we do something with takedown? And then we realized that's like every judo studio that exists has like takedown in their name, and we're like, okay, well that doesn't work. Like, what would be like a fun thing that would be similar to a takedown, like a reprimand that we could play around with? And then we just kind of came up with like, what if it was just a slap? Like that's just like, it's so, I don't know. This was before Will Smith and that that
The, yeah,
debacle.
the Will Smith Chris Rock incident.
Yes, so this is before that, and we were just like, it'd be, like kind of like a Indiana Jones backhand slap across the face, like is like manly but also kind of funny. But yeah, and it started really with, we started in a bar in Brooklyn. I met up with my friend Lee, and he's a kind of a coder, and I was like, okay, I got this crazy idea, but like I can't find any other place that would do this, and it's like really hurting the indie film world. Like, could we figure out a way to like make things really efficient and find takedowns and or find find instances of infringement of people's works for them? Can we then like automate ways to quickly take it down and like build a system? And he didn't really know the film world at the time, and so I like sort of came from it from that side, and he came from it like, okay, well this is what we could do, and we're like, okay, the more efficient we can make it, the cheaper we can make it. So, and then sort of built it up with iterations to yeah, kind of make it like a digital army for filmmakers. And that's sort of how we see each other. Like, I had a meeting with a unnamed big studio a little while ago, and it was really interesting because they've got like entire legal teams that do this. But as an indie filmmaker, like, I didn't have a legal team. I mean, most of those contracts, I'm really good at contracts now because of the number of contracts I've had to review as an indie film, like a producer. And you're like, oh, I understand legalese now, maybe 95%, probably not 100%, but like, it's not like we've got teams of lawyers. And so it was figuring out a way to essentially create an online system that did that for people.
Yeah, and when you mentioned the studio you met with, they don't have to worry about this kind of stuff because they can afford a whole team to do it for them. I can't afford a legal team. A lot of indie filmmakers can't afford a legal team. So, and once you really start to get into the trenches of filmmaking, you realize that there's not just the artistic or the creative side. There is the business side. There's the legal side. And you
There's the
don't.
marketing
Yep,
side.
there's the
Yeah.
marketing. Yeah, and you don't know what you don't know. But it's great to
Mm-hmm.
have a resource like Copyright Slap that will help with that.
Yeah, and it's not that people can't do it on their own. Like, I did it on my own, and it's like, it's not the most complex. Like, I'll explain it if
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
helpful
yeah,
for
yeah. Go
anybody who
for it.
like wants to do it on their own. So essentially, the DMCA, the Digital Millennial Copyright 1998, says that if somebody puts something online and it's somebody else's work, they cannot be found to be violating that person's copyright until the copyright holder informs them that they have posted the copyright holder's work. And then they're obligated to, within a reasonable amount of time, take down that thing that they posted. And this is what piracy sites use to sort of get around it. They post it, and until they're informed, oh no, I didn't know this film that clearly I stole from Apple TV or whatever is a copyrighted thing, until you get a notice. And so the DMCA takedown notice is a very specifically worded document, and you essentially have to take that template, create one for each instance of infringement that you find, and then you have to find the contact, and this is where the hard part is, find the contact for that site, that site, and maybe it's the site holder, or maybe they're hiding behind some other company, and you have to be able to go to that company, or you have to find their web host. And this is sort of where we come in, because we built a database of 10,000 plus websites. But you find that contact info, and then you email or whatever, submit a form, you send it to them. As soon as they receive it, you've got between 24 and 72 hours to take it down, or technically you can take legal action because now they're violating. And recently the US launched a small claims court. And so you could go to small claims court, because I believe it's something like each occurrence of piracy, you can sue for like $30,000. I should have looked this number up for the current time, but I believe it's about 30K. And that would go through small claims court. The problem is a lot of these pirate sites are hidden behind so many layers that finding the person who does it is really hard. If it was somebody takes a professional photographer's photo and they use it in their ad campaign, the company. You can contact that company and be like, you owe me this much money, or I'm going to sue you. With films, it's a lot harder, because finding the source of money to go after is really hard. That said, they do listen to DMCA takedown notices. So the thing that I was running into initially as a filmmaker was just, within a week of a film going online, there's like 50 sites a day that were putting up my film. And I was like, okay, I've got to organize this template and find the exact, link for this. And then I've got to find the contact info, and then I email it, and I've got to do that for 50 different things. And like, there's my entire day, and I need to make money also. And so it's just overwhelming. And so that's sort of what our goal is to like make it not overwhelming, and make it like a click of the button, and then we just do all that. But it's something that any filmmaker can do, and especially if there's like only a few occurrences, you can do that. And then there's also, we remove them from search results, so that if somebody searches for a film, the infringements that we found, even if the site refuses to take it down, it never appears on the search results. And that's, a big way that people find films. They're not like, I'm going to type in this random thing and then search for a film. They just search for a film. So the more we can remove from that, the easier it is. And, you can set up relationships with search engines. And that's sort of, I think, one of the things that we have focused on is creating relationships with non-governmental organizations, a couple governmental organizations. And this is sort of like, again, the Batman vengeance in me. Like, my goal is not, okay, just help filmmakers. It's like, destroy the pirates. And so like we have a relationship with like a governmental organization where if we can find a site that is doing a lot of piracy, we can send it to them and be like, if you could prioritize this in like maybe taking down the whole domain. And then it helps every filmmaker that had their site pirated and put on that domain. Yeah. That was, sorry, I get emotionally hyped when talking about
this is good.
Sticking it to them.
Yeah.
But I think, like each
right
filmmaker can do it. It's just not getting overwhelmed that we help with.
And that's something that, if you're a filmmaker, the last thing, especially like, with a producer, it's a bit different. But if you're a creator, if you're a writer or you're a director, the last thing you want to worry about is the legalese, the copyright, I don't want to call it the boring stuff, because it's obviously
no,
very
it is.
important.
It's kind of boring,
but it's also important. But that's the last thing that you want to be worried about it as a creator. So the fact that, again, you provide that resource, you could do it on your own, but the way you just explained it, I never want to do that. So
yeah,
I would sign up for your company in a heartbeat.
And I will say, and this is something I send to sometimes filmmakers who ask like, oh, when should we use your service? And one of the things I say, because I also like am wary of filmmakers, purses, pocketbooks, whatever you want to call them, their budget, is like, as soon as you go to festivals and your film is on IMDb, just the title and the info, some pirate sites will put it up and say like, they'll have a poster of your film and they'll say, oh, you've got it on this site. They don't have it on your site. They're not the film festivals are not leaking it. They don't have it. So you should not, you can send some takedown stuff if you want, but like they don't have your pirated film. So you don't, even if you find it online, don't worry until you've released on streaming. And then once you're on streaming, you're screwed. Uh, but a lot of people come and they're like, oh, I found this site. And I'm like, okay, you just did film festivals? And like, yes. I'm like, don't worry about it. I mean, you can, and we will send a takedown, for you, but like, you don't need to spend money on this yet if you don't want to, because those aren't legit. They're just trying to get traffic to the site, and they'll say like, oh, coming soon. And they'll, you click it and it goes to a different movie, or you click it and it says, sign up for, a monthly subscription at blah, 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 bullshit site. And then you can watch films. And then I've never actually signed up, but I'm assuming you sign up and then they're like, this film's not available yet, coming soon. But now you've given them your money. But I just say that, like, don't worry if it's just at festivals, even if it pops up. That's sort of some free advertising until you want it to not be.
Right. It's so shady when you really think about it. Like the whole piracy thing, it's mm, it's so shady. So it's why you gotta be careful.
I mean, I'm in New York. I went to school in New York. I remember back in the day, the like VHS bootlegs where people would set up like shaky cameras in theaters. You'd be like, oh man, that not that I ever bought them. But that it'd be like somebody stands up and goes to the bathroom and there's like 5 seconds of the film blocked. But like, it's been around for a long time and people have found ways to make money. It's just sort of with the digital age made it much easier and much cleaner, because you can't tell the difference between a 1080 or a 2K film that's recorded and then now on these piracy sites.
Yeah, it's kind of mind blowing when you think about it. Back in the day, before the invention of the smartphone, that people would take cameras into a theater and just
Mm-hmm.
film the screen, and you'd find it on whatever torrent site or wherever you could find it. And now with these the smartphones, it is a lot easier. I've never, now that I think about it, I don't think I ever experienced anyone, like I never saw somebody bring a camera into
No, me
a movie
neither.
theater, but it's crazy as to how often that it happens. And the fact that back in those days I went to the movie theater quite a bit and never saw it, but obviously it
Mm-hmm.
happened.
And it's really weird because also, I mean, I think I saw one movie like that somebody, like a friend of mine, had bought. I want to say it was B movie with Jerry
Yeah,
Seinfeld.
Seinfeld.
And we like all watched it together on I guess a VHS, and maybe it was TV. It's got to be, I don't know, whatever format it was. But like, if it was available for us to buy legitimately, I think we probably would have. I think it was like 10 of us watched it. We probably would have thrown in what, like $1. Uh, but I think it's that interesting thing, because now you can buy things so quickly. As you said, you can buy it from your phone. You can buy it. You go to, there's Tubi TV, or Hulu started out as an AVOD, service. There are a bunch of things that you can just watch a few ads and then you get it for free. But people still go this other route, and I think it's sort of what we talked about earlier. That the hurdle is lowered when it's the internet, because people don't pause to think about it as frequently.
Yeah, the word free pops up in their mind before anything else, which is
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the reality that we live in, and the reality that like your company is trying to erase, which I think is a good thing. So as we start to wrap up here, um, tell me your website. What's Company Slap's website, and how can people access it?
It's super easy. It is copyrightslap.com. And also, just for filmmakers, we have a 7-day free trial that is, you get everything. That we are sort of like, we do more than, and I'll say this too, like, we do more than the high end sites that charge hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month. Uh, I've looked at what they do, and all the things that they charge even extra for, we just do. And our big thing is like, we try and do a great job. And so do it for free. Take it for a test drive. You get 7 days to do everything. There's no limit on how many takedowns you can send and see. And like, if you're happy, then you continue. And hopefully we just convince you that we've done a good enough job that you want to continue. But if not, like, also just try it out. Like, during those 7 days, we can screw over more pirates, and I'm okay with that. Um, like, you know, it's sort of a weird thing, but like, the vengeance comes first, and then, you know, the company comes second. But I think it's also important for, you know, you have this show where you bring on actors, you bring on producers, you know, you talk about the industry, and that creates a level of respect. From the level of respect that you have, that sort of fuels understanding that, you know, purchasing or going to legitimate sites for films helps this industry and helps it survive, because it's not going to survive if none of these indie filmmakers can make their money back. And you can't pitch an investor, okay, well, we'll make some of the money back, but like probably not all of it, because like there are these pirate sites and they're going to screw us over. But like, if you could get some merchandise, which we won't because we're an indie film, you know, it's sort of that duality, or that double-edged sword that we're fighting against. But that, you know, your podcast is sort of adding to that respect level, that hopefully, you know, people listen and they go, oh yeah, I guess I'll do that one quick check of like what the name of this site is, and then maybe I'll go to a different site.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head. There will be no movies to pirate if the piracy keeps happening, because it's, you know, all these big name filmmakers, they all started small. And who knows, you know, the next Spielberg or the next Chris Nolan might be out there in the indie world. But if his or her movie keeps getting pirated, they're probably not going to be a filmmaker for their entire career.
Duplass brothers, Mark Duplass, finally came.
There
to me.
we go.
And because they came from the indie world.
Oh, that's. I figured it was going to happen like 5 seconds after we stopped recording, so I'm so glad that it made it.
I got it in. But yeah, they came from the indie world. They shot a film on an iPhone. I mean, Tangerine, I think is the name of it. And you know, it's, yeah, and I think that's where a lot of the great ideals culminate, because all the big budget movies are so overproduced, or you've got these companies that are like, we're, you know, looking at this data. I think, you know, with AI, it's only getting worse, because some of them are like, we're going to take the script and the actors and we're going to put it through this AI engine, and it'll tell us how much it's worth in each region. And if the calculations on the budget are lower than how much it'll be worth, then we will greenlight it. And it's like, okay, but that's, one, it's generative AI. So you're just taking data that's from the past and not based on new ideas. So it's only going to see good ideas in past good ideas and not new ones. And it's gonna play it safe, and you're not gonna have interesting creative films.
No, you're absolutely right.
And so you need the indie world.
Yeah. No, 100%. You need, it's, the whole industry is very much a, I guess you'd call it a trickle up process, because you go from the indie world, and that then you eventually build and you get bigger and you make bigger budget movies. Like, that's how the industry works. But it's,
I mean, you got Whiplash, started as a short film and then got made into a feature. I mean, Coda, who would have what generative AI would have predicted that would make money? But it's a great film.
You want to know something crazy about Whiplash? This is the 10-year anniversary of it.
Wow.
I
was also,
funny enough, right before we started, I was on Twitter and saw that it's being re-released in theaters for the 10-year anniversary, and I'm like, that movie's 10 years old.
I mean, I just remember the big controversy with that one, that it couldn't be in the category for best original screenplay, because they said, oh, well, it's based on a short film. And they were like, but we came from the indie world. Like, you need to do a short film as a proof of concept to get money to make the feature. It's like, that is the foundation of a lot of indie filmmaking. Like, how can that cancel it out?
Make it make sense. Somebody make it make sense, because it doesn't make sense. But do you have social media that so people the
Yeah,
listeners can
yeah.
follow you?
We're on Instagram and the Facebook, if that's still around. And technically, I think we're still on X, though. Just you know, out of morals, I'm not a big fan. But yeah, we're
Understandable.
at Copyright Slap for both of those, or all of those. And we're actually about to start releasing blogs that are sort of insider views on copyright infringement, how to like go about it, sort of different hurdles that people run into the indie world, just sort of spreading the knowledge.
Fantastic.
And that'll be on our
Yeah,
website.
fantastic. Well, Evan, this has been a really insightful and wonderful chat, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.